if you started your spiritual journey, like me, you might have this struggle, which is figuring out how to live spiritually in our modern society, because of course we need to find a way to earn our living and sustain ourselves in this reality. But how can you do that while keeping your sense of spiritual self? Because those two things at the first glance seems quite incompatible. On one side you have the financial and material aspect of our reality, and on the other side you have something that is less visible, less sensible, and more abstract, which is the whole aspect of spirituality. Why is this such a struggle, you might think? Well, in my observation, and also what I discussed about with some friends of mine who are also very inclined to spirituality, is that the more powerful you are in your spiritual self, in the sense of your psychic ability and how gifted you are, the more it is going to be difficult to flourish financially and materially. So, I mean, in other words, just like in being rich or, earning money. Just to prove my point, like, for example, have you ever seen like a Buddhist monk being crazy rich? I personally have not, or it is very rare. Maybe it is possible, but it doesn't seem like it's very compatible to the Buddhist monk lifestyle to have a big amount of wealth. And on the other spectrum, you might have those entrepreneurs who are like super rich, but they are so obsessed about money and material life that they can manage to accumulate a big amount of wealth. But that's the only aspect they will be interested into. Now, I'm here to tell you that it is possible to have a bit of both. So, finding a good balance between those two extremes. So, I will mainly stand in the middle, or maybe more toward a little bit of the material side, while keeping a step in the spiritual aspect of life. So, the usual misunderstanding that we have is that most of the time we think you have to leave everything behind and live as a hermit, going into the forests and, live as a caveman and give everything up about the material life. Because one thing that the Native Americans are right about is that material life has no value. It has no value spiritually, but it is here to help you sustain yourself. So, in a sense, that's a bit of a paradox, but also, so it makes sense, but also we still kind of need it. That's my point. Now, in our modern society, I see a lot of people make this mistake of giving everything up and choosing to only live spiritually, but at the cost of their material aspect. And I think that is a big mistake, and it comes to a mindset or a difficult relationship with money. Because from a spiritual point of view, money is also energy. And what we can think about is that And the way which can change our mindset is that money is here to help us sustain ourselves and have a more rich spiritual experience. I'm not gonna lie to you, being spiritual is kind of a luxury, because if you were born poor in poor countries, then you have no leverage to think about any kind of spiritual mindset, because you will be too focused on struggling on getting money and earning your living, that there will be no room to think about any spiritual subject. So in my case, spiritual life is, in a sense, a very a lifestyle that is mostly reserved to those who can afford to. Being a bit obsessed with getting money is, to me, fine, as long as we keep in mind that it is just a mean, not an end. And we have to keep in mind that even though money in this society rhymes with power, we should not use it as an ego trip in order to boost our own ego and think we are superior to other people. And if you have observed our society, most of the rich, very crazy rich people have this sort of ego boost, or, you know, a power trip, and thinking that they are above anyone else. And that is a big issue. Now that you understand all of that, you can now understand why I want to tell you that living spiritually in the modern life is actually to realize that we are where we are supposed to be. That even though you might be pursuing a career, doesn't mean that you cannot live spiritually. You can live spiritually as long as you stay authentic to yourself and stay connected to what you're doing. Because, of course, if you feel like you're betraying yourself while doing a specific job or whatever, then of course you're not in the right place, and you need to change that. If you don't feel connected, then there's no point. You have to change something. Now, depending on the audience, I don't know if it's very clear to you, because like it might be very theoretical, theoretical. Yeah, it might be theoretical. So I will use myself as an example and what spiritual life looks like to me. Of course, it's not an absolute truth, but you can use it as an example or a template or whatever, and just take the good things out of it and adjust according to your needs. So to me, spiritual life is 50% the mindset and 50% the practices. So on the mindset part is to stay connected inward and to be authentic to ourselves. Like stop being stopping people pleasing, or betraying ourselves in favor to others. So in a sense, loving yourself and discover that you have your power. And on the practice part, well, when I started my spiritual journey, I did a lot of different practices that the New Age spiritually talk about, such as crystal healing, shamanism, paganism, divination, like tarot cards reading, and a lot of different kind of practices. And in this age of information, where there's truth and lies mixed together, I think it's important to experience it yourself and keep what feels aligned with you, what will resonate with you, and what works for you. And maybe the those aspect of the new age trend is not the most important. What I think is the most important is cultivating your own energy and protecting your own energy. So you now kind of have a grasp on what spiritual life is on the most abstract level, of course, because I don't want to go too deep into details. There is so much to talk about. But now that you understand that, the question is, how do you integrate it in modern life? Because you cannot just stay at home in silence and just isolating yourself and do your practices. Of course, it will work, but also, again, you will miss out on the material and financially part of life because as you work, probably you will have to be around people who are not necessarily aligned with your values and with yourself, and they might not even be aligned with themselves actually. They might be completely lost. That's very likely. And since those people don't practice spiritually, what happens is they will feel the need to drain this energy to people like you, which leads to my next video, which will be about how to protect your energy in order to better integrate your lifestyle in this modern society. If my message was useful to you, let me know in comments. If not, also let me know. I want to improve as much as possible as I'm beginning on YouTube, and also my English is not my main language, so I will continue to improve on how to deliver a clearer and better understandable message.